Chaps, I'm so excited for this. I have done my research. I've spoken to many, many mutual friends. So first, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to be with you.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm going to start and I'm going to direct questions quite strictly today because it's a very rare time for us to have two people on the show. So I want to start with, how did you make your way into the world of tech and come to both co-found Wonder? And so Sujay, let's start with you and then move to Jeffrey.
Well, I grew up in tech, Harry. I was basically born into it. My dad was an immigrant engineer, your classic Silicon Valley story, came with very little, started a company in 1988 in an era where it was really hard for folks with his background to get venture funding. So he and his three co-founders, they were Taiwanese, he was Indian, couldn't raise a dime. They bootstrapped it, and 5 years later, it was the world's largest chipset maker. 40% of the personal computers in the world had their chipset. The funny thing about the Valley is these stories get forgotten really fast because of creative destruction. And then he started a software company in 1996, which, crazy story, went public on the day the NASDAQ peaked in 2000, the same day. And so it was not too dissimilar than this last year. It was 100, call it 90, something like that million or so of what you would call ARR today. Mega enterprise accounts, Cisco, BMW, IBM, LVMH, accounts like that. And in the first day, its market cap was about $5 billion. And they raised something like $200 million in the IPO. 2 years later, it was trading for a market cap of $200 million. The cash cash in the bank. So I've seen I grew up in this environment. I've seen the cycle multiple times. And so there's lots to talk about.
Jeffrey, hit me. How did you make your way here?
Sure. Well, here's the thing, Harry, which is, as you well know, I spent 40 years in the media, entertainment, movie, TV business. But interestingly, there was a sort of theme through pretty much every chapter of that where technology was a gigantic enabler of our storytelling. And if you think of the rate of innovation that has gone on, particularly with movies and television, over these, say, let's just call it the last 30 years or so, it's pretty astounding. So whether it's in the films in terms of special effects and the entire process end to end of making films, for me, probably the most transformative moment is when, I reached out to Steve Jobs and John Lasseter and brought them into the Walt Disney Company and made a home for Pixar. So it's just, when I started DreamWorks Animation, we had a studio in Redwood Shores of over 800 engineers and artists. So I sort of felt like,
it's a continuation.
Technology has been my ally, my friend, my partner in pretty much everything that I've done. And the relationships were established, frankly, 20 years ago, and I've maintained them.
Oh, and we're going to dive into that, Jeffrey. Don't worry. I heard it from many different people, so have no fear. I'm getting to that, maybe. So I'm going to break up because there's two specific questions I have for both of you on your careers. Sujay, scaling Dropbox, you were instrumental to the scaling. What's the single biggest takeaway for you, which is incredibly hard and unfair of me to ask, but the single biggest takeaway for you, and how did that impact your mindset today and as an investor?
The number one takeaway is hire really, really talented people. And I don't mean talented in terms of necessarily what they've accomplished, but rather talented in terms of their potential and work ethic. And then put them in jobs that are suited to where they spike. So, people are talented in different areas. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So figure out what these talented people could be great at and put them in those jobs. And that way, if you don't know how to do anything, they'll figure it out.
Jeffrey, in terms of you, incredible time with DreamWorks. What was your biggest takeaway and how did that impact your mindset?
Literally every day, make sure you're looking around the corner over the horizon to what's coming at you. Change is part of all of our lives, but embracing that change, culturally, is a high bar. And for me, having lived through the disruption of hand-drawn animation to computer animation, I would say was, probably one of the greatest challenges, and our survival literally depended on our ability to make a pivot. It was brutal. We lost a lot of very talented people who were not actually, didn't have the capabilities to be a part of the innovation that was going on. But I have to say, if we hadn't done it, we would have gone bankrupt.
I totally get you, and I love those as two takeaways. Now, I mentioned Somesh at IVP before the show. He gave me a really tough one, so I'm blaming him. It's not me, it's him, okay? He said... and
well, he'll pay the price for it, so go for it.
Okay, well...
We'll get even.
Poor Somesh. He said, when you have something like Quibi, how does that impact your mindset towards risk? Does it make you more or less inclined to take risk? And
Great question. He's okay, and I'm okay. He's not getting punished for that. So the reason why it's a great question, Harry, is that in many respects it exemplifies the difference between the culture of Northern California and the culture of Southern California. In Southern California, so let me just start with the following. We are in a risk business. Right? Mm-hmm. Media and entertainment and technology, founders building new companies. There's a very simple equation. If you want to do something that is original and unique, it equals risk. Yeah. If you are going to do something that is risky, it means there needs to be the provision for failure. If you take out the equation, the ability to ever fail, you will not take risk. If you don't take risks, you'll never do anything unique and original. It's true of every pioneer. Okay, so in the Southern California, in the culture that I grew up in, failure comes with huge public humiliation. Doesn't matter whether you're in front of the camera or behind the camera. The nature of it and the media around it is you get punished pretty brutally when you fail. You get raked across the coals, and the list is endless of movie stars and their ups and downs. In Silicon Valley, you fail, you get on to the next thing. Like sure. Failure makes you smarter, makes you stronger. It's part of how you grow as an entrepreneur out of it. And so going back specifically to Quibi, I was never humiliated by the failure of it. I was humbled by it. We never had product market fit. It was a really, really big, bold, audacious, swing for the fence idea. And everybody involved in it understood that. Interestingly, from a content standpoint, I believe it hit a very high mark, and that the quality of work that was done out of Hollywood and out of the best storytellers, they delivered to me. I set a very high bar, they hit it. Where we failed is actually product market fit. And how much of that is, and that's a big learning lesson for me. It was designed day one to launch almost like a movie, which is it either opens or it doesn't. And that was a mistake. Obviously, doing it in a on-the-go mobile product during a pandemic where we shut the world down impacted it. But I don't blame it only on that. That certainly was a factor. So a good learning lesson for me. I'm humbled by it, but I wasn't humiliated by it because I thought we did something that we could be proud of.
Sujay, what about you? Somesh said that you'd have different answers.
So when I was at Dropbox, one of the I won't say who, but one of the largest investors in the world in tech told me that they had run a survey of all the investments they'd ever made. And the founders that didn't actually talk to them, refused to take their calls, were the ones that were the most successful. And they didn't really know how to process that emotionally. I'm a Silicon Valley guy. I've been around this game for a long time, and the way you would launch a company in my universe is a little bit different, as Jeffrey knows, and he and I would disagree on this at the time.
But Sujay was an incredible counter perspective on this that was actually invaluable. And it's one of the things that I love so much about him as a partner, which is he was able to question and to cajole and to push me in a way to look at things that I was not able to see. That his experience, and specifically his scaling and go-to-market through Dropbox, was actually great insights. Unfortunately, we weren't able to overcome them. But let me tell you, one of the things that happened out of it is that when it was clear that Quibi wasn't going to succeed, which was pretty early on, by the way. I mean, it was in 60 days, 90 days of our launch of it that it was a misfire in this. One of the things Sujay impacted on me gigantically is the fact I shut it down as quickly as I possibly could because I wanted to return as much of our money to our investors as we could. We returned $600 million out of the initial $1 billion to our investors. And, so I don't think I would have gotten there without him.
Harry, here's the interesting thing. There have been a lot of companies that have raised giant piles of cash here over the last couple of years. I don't know of a single one that is returned their capital to people. They'd rather just sit on it and figure it out. And I think they're doing a disservice to a lot of people.
I just got a shitload of negativity on Twitter because I tweeted there is a whole generation of companies that are at Series B stage with money like capital reserves because they've raised preemptive rounds and they have no product market fit. We're going to see a wave of Series B investors ask for their cash back. Don't put that on the Twitter sphere. You're not going to get much love back for that.
All
but
right,
my question to you,
back.
No, I agree with you totally. My question to you is though, when you think about that. When you think about that, we're going to see kind of the living dead in this new generation. What do you do if you're a living dead company today? I'm too interested to hear your thoughts.
This is the hardest part of the whole thing, is there is no doubt that one or two of those living dead companies will figure out a spectacular pivot over the next decade and build unbelievable products that millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people use. And that's one or two out of probably what will end up being like 1,000 living dead companies. And so the irony of it is that you basically have a situation where the people that should fight on, God bless, go for it, keep trying. But there's a whole bunch of people who are doing it for the wrong reasons. Not that they have some sort of profound idea or some belief in the future, but rather feel some social pressure, or they don't know what else they'll do with their life, or things of that nature. And that's going to be a really bad thing for a lot of people.
So, Harry, for me, my pressure was, in my entire career, I have never lost money for somebody who invested or backed me in what I was doing, ever, before this. Which, for someone who spent 40 years in media and entertainment, that's a unicorn. There's not many people that can say that.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, actually the thing that was humiliating to me is I lost money. And so to mitigate that as much as I possibly could, as quickly as I could, when I understood we were walking dead, right? We didn't do it prematurely. It was, the writing was clear as could be. This was not going to succeed. That to me was the motivator.
I totally get that as the motivator, and I think that's great to hear. I think the question is kind of pre that. There's this question for a lot of companies today, which is they have to make hard decisions. Do we cut costs? Do we reduce teams? Versus do we continue to invest in growth and risky bets and progress as a company? How do you advise these founders on leading through this downturn with the continuation versus cutting costs?
I don't think they're generalities. I don't think you can answer that and just say it's one size fits all. I think every company, every founder, every set of circumstance, has its own unique characteristics. And so what you can do is to put a mirror up and help a founder see clearly what the pros and cons are, what the struggles are, what the opportunities are, in order for them to make that assessment. But I don't know, Sujay?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll give a generality. So basically, I think this will be true for what I might, again, I'm just making this up, but 98% of these companies. Strip the business down to the core, so you generate whatever that means. Don't waste more time on it if it's not working. And then if you're going to stick it out, absolutely go pursue some risky bets and go take a moonshot, because don't waste your time just keeping a living dead company alive. If you're going to go for it and spend your one life on something and spend investors' capital and all these employees' time and career trajectories, and if you're going to invest all those resources into something, you got to do it on something meaningful, not on just keeping a business, kind of floating.
We love a generality. Fantastic. Well done. Media, baby. Media. Jeffrey, you said about your 40 years there and that incredible career. Respectfully, for someone like both of you with incredible stellar backgrounds, I would be leaning into the operators make the best investors and look at us with our CVs. But you guys have said to me before, operating experience becomes irrelevant very fast. Wasn't where I thought you were going to take that. Why does it become irrelevant fast?
Okay, so I'll explain why it becomes irrelevant fast, and then I'll also tell you why we're kind of talking our own book at the same time, because that's a piece of it we didn't talk about. So it becomes irrelevant fast because the world changes, right? The tools you use, the platforms you're building on, the platforms you're marketing on, the competitive dynamics, all of those things change really quickly, right? So when someone sees a marketing trick work, immediately thousands of people pile into that tactic and they commoditize it, or they make it irrelevant, or the platform gets frustrated by the tactic and the way they perceive it as abuse and they shut it down. And so what ends up happening is, I'll give you one example. I get asked all the time about something that Drew had done early in Dropbox about the referral program, where hey, that model where it was a mutual referral program where if I recommended Dropbox to you and you used it, we would both get extra storage. Yeah. And I said, yeah, it's great. I mean, I can't think of another company at scale that's been successful with that, but it was an amazing tactic and it was responsible for a lot of, or good, reasonable chunk of early growth. But we also had like 50 other things we did. That's just the one that got publicized. And so when you think about that construct, I think the biggest mistake operators make when they give advice to founders is it's purely out of the lens of their experience in the environment and the circumstances with the tools and the capabilities that they had available to them. And all those macro things are totally different today for an entrepreneur. And so I actually do think it's largely irrelevant. The one area where I found it to be, useful over time is in people management. Yeah. Like there's just some stuff you have to go through interpersonally with people to learn. And so I think operators have often given great advice. But the way we solve for that, because we do think the operating is an edge. Like if you actually have relevant operating advice to give someone, that's a huge advantage. So what we do is we continuously build companies. So half of what WndrCo does is not, venture or growth investing. We actually buy companies and incubate them, kind of 1 to 2 a year. The only one anyone ever talks about is Quibi, but we have some others that are wildly successful, and maybe people will start caring. And that's how we keep our operating experience fresh. And so that's the operating experience we bring people, even if what they really want to talk about is the Lion King and Dropbox.
How do you answer LP's questions in terms of time management across incubation and across investing? Like incubation done well is fucking hard and full time. How do you manage incubation and investing at the same time? And
Jeffrey, why don't you tell him what your days are? Just this is like one of the more crazy things.
I've heard his days are like 18-hour days. He doesn't need to do it, respectfully, Jeffrey. He doesn't need to do it, but he still works harder than everyone else.
Yeah, well, work is my happiness in it, but the ability to actually help build companies today as well as invest in them actually makes us better at both. And for me, it's actually what makes WndrCo so exciting for me is that, we're exercising both muscles right now. And the way you do it is by, frankly, getting the best people and recruiting in the best talent. I mean, our largest investment, our largest build is Aura, and it's run by just a killer founder CEO, who we're able to bring values to him every day. We're like part of his staff. He deploys us on behalf of himself. I always laugh and say I'm his deputy director of sales, but
not director of sales. One day, Jeffrey.
No,
one day you'll get the promotion.
Yeah, I aspire. But I think it is that balance of having that experience that when we are talking to founders today, we are having the same issues and problems and challenges and seeing the same opportunities in the businesses that we have a big hand in, a control stake in, that just makes it relevant.
Can I ask, speaking of like staying relevant there and keeping mindsets fresh, Jeffrey, everyone said about the strength of your network. The hard thing is with network over many years, it accumulates, and with breadth comes actually a lack of depth. That's not the case for you. How do you maintain network breadth and depth in a way that no other people really can?
Well, honestly, I just work really, really hard at it. Investing in relationships and partnerships and friendships, these are, to me, have always been high priority, and I've always gotten a tremendous ROI from it. And I find it enormously rewarding. So, today we have so many different devices available to do it, Harry. So some of it comes from my 3 breakfasts and 2 lunches and dinners, and some of it comes from hitting the phone, which is my old school weapon of mass destruction. But much of it today is just on text, and just staying in touch with people and being interested in what they're doing and reaching out when I see that people are doing interesting and exciting things and just maintaining it. I mean, it's very rewarding.
I heard you put
so
your
Harry,
cards
I'm just going to give you just a data point on Jeffrey and his keeping tabs on folks. So my wife and I went skiing with Jeffrey and his wife. This is 2017 or something. We were just after we had gotten WndrCo going, and it's Saturday morning. And the way that Jeffrey used to handle skiing is we're first thing out on the mountain, just go up, up and down, not don't even talk sort of thing, and then come back at lunch, eat lunch, and then on a Saturday, Jeffrey had a call list that was must have been 80 names. And over the next 4 hours, while the rest of us were being normal humans, he cranked through and called every single person on this call list. And that's just a Saturday afternoon for Jeffrey.
I love that. I even heard that Jeffrey actually put his card behind certain breakfast places to stop the wait of paying for things at the end. The 5 to 10
all
minute
of them.
wait.
That's not certain. That's every restaurant in LA.
I mean, Sujay, you shouldn't partner with people that make you look bad in this way. You should choose your partners strategically. That's why mine are all lazy. You mentioned the importance of people. We spoke about Jeffrey's network. The thing that worries me a little bit is, so much of network was in person, and a lot of that was in the Valley. And, everyone talks about, the death of Silicon Valley. Keith Raboy promotes Barry's in Miami. Sadly, haven't joined him for a Barry's class yet. But, the question is, how do you feel about the sentiment that Silicon Valley is dead and that old school Valley network isn't there anymore?
Harry, I'm going to say to you, not only do I feel it's not dead, I'm going to take a contrary point of view, very contrarian point of view, that what in fact is going on in the Valley today is going to create a whole new crop, a whole new generation, because all the downsizing that's going on, there are thousands and thousands of people in Silicon Valley being laid off from jobs who are going to fuel a whole new generation of innovation and creativity, and people, heading out on their own and creating, next generation brilliant companies. You watch.
Sujay, how do you feel?
I totally agree. I was open-minded to the Valley is dead argument, at the beginning of COVID. I think there are certainly elements of Valley culture that had gotten, that a good recession was needed to fix. Entitlement, the feeling that everyone should get a promotion and a raise twice a year. That kind of general malaise that comes from a huge percentage of the talent working at gigantic companies and not actually accomplishing much. But that feels like it's breaking really fast. Over the last 6 or 9 months, the idea of hard work became, being the priority of a startup. It's back to the top of the list. That we've got to, that your job is to fight for customers and build cool products and recruit the best people. Like that, and this doesn't sound like rocket science, but I feel like those three things weren't the top three priorities for most companies here for the last couple of years, and I think that's flipped back to the right way already.
You said about recruiting people there. What do you know now that you wish you'd known when you started hiring and recruiting top talent?
So, the person who I actually thought was the most insightful interviewer of, normal team members was Arash, who was the co-founder and CTO of Dropbox. Arash is the most, most challenging interviewer I think most people interviewed with him have ever experienced, because he'd be on his laptop the whole time. He wouldn't look at you, and somehow he would intuit things about you that you probably didn't even know about yourself. He's a pretty remarkable guy in that sense. And he was actually the person who kept the talent bar at Dropbox as high as he did. Like Dropbox has that well-earned reputation for being a place where lots of talented people worked. And the bar would have easily come down if it wasn't for him. So I would say that, being rigorous on keeping that talent bar high is super important. And then beyond that, work ethic, passion, intensity, finding people who are working for you because they're really excited about what you're doing and not because you're a hot company. If I was to say one thing, that would be the one thing.
Sujay, Somesh asked me to ask, why did none of the great talent stay? I agree with you. It's like the PayPal mafia, unbelievable talent, but the retention didn't last.
Well, I think it's the same as PayPal, right? Like when people join a company and they think it's going to be worth $1 trillion, if it's worth $10 billion, that's amazing. I mean, there's not going to be many after this whole recession is done that are worth $10 billion, but Dropbox will be because it's just a cash flow machine. But you don't make generational wealth if you're employee 500 at a $10 billion company. Whereas if you're at a $100 billion company or a $500 billion company, it's really, really hard to get motivated to go through the full startup grind. And so I think and it's easy to stay. And so I would say that if PayPal sold to eBay for $50 billion, I doubt the intensity and commitment to pursuing startups would have been as high for as many of them. Certainly some, but not most.
Jeffrey, you've hired incredible teams. What do you know now that you wish you'd known when you started hiring incredible talent?
I would actually have to say, Harry, that there hasn't been a new lesson for me in that. I think it's been consistent for 40 years, and that I've always looked for people with extraordinary passion, driven, type A, here's what it takes to come to work in the environment that I'm in and I'm building and what I'm trying to do. It's not right for everybody. I'm infamous in this town for having said a line in my early Disney days, if you don't come to work on Saturday, don't bother coming on Sunday.
Tell me about that. Enon told me to ask you about that one.
Well, I meant it when I said it. So that's the probably I've learned my lesson, which is I actually have come to understand there is a work-life balance that actually makes somebody the best version of themselves. But the sentiment there is I wanted people who wanted to go to Mars with me, right? I wanted them. We were on a mission. It was a very high bar for us to get to where we were going to. It's not right for everybody, but if you're going to be in this environment, I want you 110%. What I have learned over the years is that different people, some people are night owls, some people are, daytime is where their greatest productivity is. And you need to make allowances for those things. People that wanted to raise a family. Sujay's in the middle of raising a family right now. It makes him a better person, a better executive, better rounded in that. And so I want him
I haven't seen them in 2 weeks because I'm on the road for work, but, who's counting?
So this is what I was actually going to say. So I get it, Jeffrey. That's so nice that Sujay's so rounded. Nah, let's face it, I fucking crush it 18 hours a day and I have zero life. I haven't seen someone in weeks, but in this world you can.
But Harry, I'm going to say to I'm going to give you some advice. That's not great. That's not. It really isn't. How old are you?
26.
Okay. You got time. But
He's like, keep at it.
You got time. But I'm telling you, a little corridor there for relationships, for friendships, for people that matter to you are actually going to make you better at your job.
Can I ask, Jeffrey, did you find it hard when people were not as bought in as you are, when they weren't as obsessed as you are? It frustrates me. I don't understand why they're not working like I am.
It's not one size fits all, Harry, and you have to make accommodation. Now, if they have a quality or a value that they're able to contribute to what you're trying to get done, you must make allowance for it. You must. But if not, then every day they work for you is actually a missed opportunity for you and for them. Because if they're not going to work out inside of your enterprise, your company, whatever it is that you're building, the faster you get to that, the better. And by the way, that's one of the lessons I learned along the way, which is I had seen, okay, well, let's give them 3 months and maybe they'll come around to it, or let's give them 6 months, or let's give them a year. That shit kills you, and I am telling you, I've had things where I hired a COO of my company, and the day after he arrived, right, 2 days after he arrived, I went, oh my God, this is not going to work. Literally, it was a big headline news in the business, and everybody was like, "Oh,
wait, you got rid of him 2 days in?"
Oh no, I knew 2 days in it wasn't going to work. It took me 30 days to actually deal with it. But normally I would have lived with it for a year or two.
Yeah, I
right?
do.
Disaster.
Do you agree when there's doubt, there's no doubt?
I mean, mostly. I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions. So I wouldn't. I think it's a little too simplistic because, look, if you're a rigorous, like if you have super high expectations, everyone's going to come up short at some moment in time. So that you can't use that as a generic standard. But it is, especially when you're early, you haven't managed many people, and you're an empathetic person. So let's just take that as because there are many people in our business who are not empathetic, and for them, they're a little Aspergery and they can fire someone without thinking too hard about it. But for people who are empathetic, which I think Jeffrey is and I think I am, firing people is brutal because you can't sleep, right? You're thinking about it all the time because it's like their life, their families, their reputation, all that stuff you're thinking about. And so it's really hard, and if you've never done it before, it's even harder. And I remember, so the first person I ever fired, I obviously won't say who they are, but it was a person in a leadership role at Dropbox and was clearly not delivering results. And Sequoia basically staged intervention with me. So Brian Schreier, who was on our board, was like, what is wrong? He's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you not? And I had all sorts of excuses, which, there was some basis to them, but they were excuses. And he said, listen, like Alfred and I are going to come up and have dinner with you. This is an important function. And we just want to talk to you about it. And, we're sitting down for 2 minutes and Alfred's like, okay, Sujay, just walk me through the situation. Walk him through the situation. And Alfred looks at me and he's like, look, I'm just curious. So you're the COO of this company. You've hired at this point hundreds of people. What's the best thing for all of them for you to do with this person? And I was like, oh, shit. All right, it's over. I'll deal with it tomorrow. And that for me has become the most clarifying thing as an empathetic person. So it's not like what matters to me. It's what's the right thing for all these other people who are bought into this mission that we're pursuing together. And when I frame it like that, I can make the hard calls.
That is a hard call, and firing people is tough. People often say, like, when they look at this generation, millennials are the worst employees. Do you agree with that statement, and is that fair? I'm going to put my neck on the line here. I'm going to be contrarian. Fuck it, why not? I think they are. I think they are entitled. I think they want too much money. I think they are arrogant and egotistical. I don't think they actually contemplate the challenges that their manager goes through most of the time, and I think it's appalling. Thank you. Here,
all right, so I'm going to read you. Somebody just texted me this like 10 minutes ago, an hour or 30 minutes ago. A recent National Society of High School Scholars survey of 11,000 high school and college-age people found that Gen Z, so not millennial, Gen Z's highest priorities when choosing an employer were the fair treatment of all employees across genders and races, followed by quality of life, employer flexibility, and corporate social responsibility. They are more likely to leave jobs that don't meet their needs and find better paying employment elsewhere.
Harry, you're fucked.
I forgot my gun. Give me a fucking break. I mean, whatever happened to ambition, building something of value, of meaning?
They're there. That's what you have to go on the hunt for, right? So that's, those people are out there. It's not everybody, but now you just actually said, okay, well, what's the bar that you're going to set for people you bring into your business, any business? And you just answered it for yourself. You want people that have the same conviction and have the same commitment and the same passion to go out and change the world that you do. And that's great. And you'll find them, by the way. They're there.
How does that mean you feel on the statement about Gen Zs and millennials being the worst employees?
I get, I hate these when we're like mass generalities here. And this, I don't know. I'm not buying into it.
Sujay, you love a generality.
This is a hairy comment. I'm not saying anything.
Oh, that's brilliant. You let me go first, and then you're like, nah, you know what? Peace out. I'm glad. Thank you for that, guys. Really supportive. I want to talk about you. So this is not like external, so you can stay here. But I think partnerships are these very special relationships of trust. And sometimes we disagree. What was the most recent thing you both disagreed about, and how did it get resolved?
What time we were going to get up in Riyadh to go to a workout. We had violently disagreed. I wanted to go at 5 a.m. Sujay said, I need to get another hour of sleep. And I said, come on, sissy, let's go.
So I rolled in there at the late hour of 6. The funny thing about that trip, so one of our associates, we brought him with us. And the first day,
he's 26, Harry. Your age.
He's your age, and he's a great kid. And but remember, we have not had offices for the whole time he's worked at WndrCo. So he's actually not physically spent time with Jeffrey or me. And so I think this might have been actually the first time in this kind of a concentrated way. And
he's like, who are you?
Yeah. Well, kind of. So basically, he gets in the one night. Jeffrey and I had a full day of work at that point, and the next morning, Jeffrey and I are both in the gym at whatever. I think it was actually like 5:30 or something like that, and we're cranking away. We were in there for probably an hour at this point, and he rolls in, and he just looks at us, and he was like, "Oh, you guys are already here," and it was like you could see like. He was like, "Oh, this is crazy," and then he left after some period of time, and we were still there. And afterwards, he was laughing. He was like, he's like, I guess I just realized there's another gear, and I think that's actually the biggest thing that's missing from remote work. Is there are things that I learned from watching, working for some of the best people in our business or other businesses. Someone you had on a few months ago, Harry, Scott Sandell from NEA. So I worked for Scott and started in 2008, from 2008 to 2010. One of the most amazing people I've ever worked with. And Scott was the kind of guy who could connect dots like just the fastest I've ever seen. But if I wasn't with him all the time, the reason he and I got so close is I was one of the later people. I mean, it's venture. So I was later in the office, and he would always, when he was leaving, would walk past my office. I was like the only one there, and he'd come and sit down, and then we'd just shoot the breeze for a few hours. And that's how we became so close pretty early on. And ended up, I get to, he's one of the greats in my opinion in this business, and I got to work with him on everything for years and learn from him as a result.
Yeah. Harry, I'm telling you, this 26-year-old learned more in 6 days on the road. Everything from how to pack a bag. He rolled in with these giant suitcases, and Sujay and I are one little rolly. We don't check luggage. We've learned you just don't ever do that. I don't care if you're on the road for a month. right? I mean, it's just like lesson after lesson after lesson. He just kept seeing, like when we say we'll be down at 5 minutes of 6, it's 6 minutes of 6 that we're down, not 5 minutes of 6, right? Like, if we have a meeting, you show up early, you don't show up late. Like all of these things that just were revelatory to him. And by the way, he took it all in, and where he was on day 6 was a changed person from day one.
Different person.
I agree with you both. How does that make you feel about the future of remote? I don't like it. I had some problems with my team earlier this week. It would never have happened if we were in the same office. It's fine now because we met in person, but you miss so much.
I think I don't think once again, there's not one size fits all. If you spend an hour and 15 minutes on a commute in and an hour and 15 minutes on a commute home, and you are, an engineer or you are an accountant or a lawyer where in-person isn't actually additive to what you're doing, you don't have daily multiple interactions in the course of your day, it's ridiculous and it's unproductive and it's unsatisfying. So the herd, idea that everybody moves in sync with one another, I don't think that makes a ton of sense. But the value of people being together in certain types of functions inside of companies, I think is invaluable. And I think it's been underestimated, and I think you'll see a return to it. It may not happen overnight, but it'll get there.
Yeah, we tried it for 2 years at WndrCo, Harry, and just blew it up. I got us new offices, starting this month and next month. The only thing I'll say is that there are certain leaders that I observe who seem to be really good at it. So one of the companies that we incubated with the founding team from Dropbox is called Twingate. And
yeah,
Tony Huey.
I spoke to him.
Oh, you did? You spoke to Tony. All right, so Tony, anybody you've ever met who's worked with Tony is like he is a rock star. He is tough. He's a tough as nails kind of guy. He's like one of those people who always wins. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what he's doing, he will win. And Twingate, because it was created during in 2020, has been remote from the beginning, and the output is fantastic, and he feels really comfortable with it. I was literally talking to him 2 hours ago, not about this topic in general, but I can just feel it when he's feeling confident with the rhythm of the company. And I have not seen him feel like an in-person transition would be a valuable thing. So I think it does depend on the leadership and how they are able to make it work. But for us, and I think probably for most companies, in-person is big.
Final one for you both. And it's like an all-star Mr. and Mrs. question. What do you think is each other's biggest weakness? And how would you like them to work on it?
Well, Sujay doesn't have any, so I'm good.
Oh, Jeffrey, not only.
So Harry, he's married 48 years. I now understand why.
Yeah. Yes, Harry. Let me give you the secret of marriage.
Oh yeah, tell me. Come on.
Oh, it couldn't be simpler. Couldn't be easier to understand.
Yes.
And by the way, it doesn't fail. It's 2 words. Yes, dear. That's it. Right? So here's how I've been. So Sujay and I have been on the road, and we sort of introduced one another, and this is the thing that makes him the happiest of all. So I actually talk about how in my career, I have had among the greatest mentors and partners that you could imagine. Barry Diller gave me my first gig, and I worked for him for 11 years. Michael Eisner, David Geffen, Steven Spielberg. Right? And now I got Sujay. He's my Steven Spielberg 2.0.
Sujay, listen,
Drop
you're
the
married.
mic.
You're married, but if I was dating, I would use that with every date. That is amazing. Hit me. What is the weakness? What's Sujay's weakness, Jeffrey? Come on.
It's not again, I would just say to you, it's not a weakness. I actually think it cuts both ways. He's an optimist. And to do what we're doing, if you're not an optimist, you'll never find opportunity. You have to have that in your DNA. But also, you now need to have the balance on the other side of that, which is you need a little bit of being a skeptic, a little bit of being a cynic. and he's got those qualities. So, but what drives him most is his optimism, and that's why I love him.
Sujay, your turn. Dish the dirt.
I mean, I think you can tell. I mean, Jeffrey is one of the most remarkable people on the planet. So it's hard to really talk about a weakness. I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is that he always wants to hit the home run. In baseball analogies, he's like, World Series just finished, so I'll think about baseball. I mean, and sometimes you could just bunt to advance the play. You don't need to swing the bat that hard every single time. Sometimes you can just delicately move the thing forward. And so I think that I don't know. I think if just that would probably be the one thing I would say.
It's funny. I actually have more weaknesses about both of you. I have a catalogue of them, and your
Please,
strengths.
you share them with us, Harry. We probably won't ever talk to you again, but it would be probably cathartic for us to hear our weaknesses.
Well, Jeffrey, I'll tell you, my friend. It was number one was that actually that came up multiple times for you, and then number two was what I referenced earlier, which was an inability to understand that other people may not be as obsessed as you are.
I don't think that's a weakness.
I'm in London, so I'm shielded from you. Don't hurt me, Jeffrey.
No, but I'm looking for that obsession. I agree, but that's why I say to you, birds fly in flocks. Fish in school. I want to be with others that are like me, in those regards. Not all regards, but in those regards, Harry, I really do want to be surrounded by people like that, and don't have a lot of enthusiasm for people that maybe don't.
I totally agree with you. I was happy with that. But I want to finish with a quick fire round, chap. So I say a short statement, you give me your immediate thoughts. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I have 3 minutes because I got to jump on another one here, but go on.
Okay, Jeffrey, what life lessons from fetching coffee as a PA?
Exceed expectations.
Sujay, generative AI, hype or the future?
Hype.
Why?
Anything that gets this much attention this quickly at the tail end of a bubble is because people are grasping for something. Of course, there are applications that will turn out to be wildly interesting and profound, but we're so early on that journey. I think So I'm going to just say one thing. If a product does not make life better, faster, easier, or cheaper for a customer, it hasn't yet found product market fit. And we are a long way from that with any of the generative AI applications that we've seen.
Jeffrey, what worries you about the venture landscape today?
Just that it's going to take longer for it to right-size itself for the economic environment that we're in. People will hold on longer than they should, and not make the hard choices that they need to make to succeed.
Sujay, what's the best investment advice you've ever received?
All right, I'm going to answer your last one first, then I'll answer that one. Buffett, circle of competence. So the concept is stay within your circle of competence. What doesn't matter is how big that circle is. What matters is knowing where the boundary actually is. So I think that's where people get themselves in trouble all the time, is at that boundary.
Jeffrey, what do you know now you wish you'd known when you started Wonder?
Well, I'm learning every day, Harry, so I have to say, when I started in the movie business, I was 23. And so by the time I was 28, I knew something about everything and everything about nothing. And I feel like today I'm 28 in the venture world.
Final one for you. Sujay, I'll give it to you. What does Wonder look like in 10 years' time?
In 10 years, I would love for us to be basically doing what we're doing now. Build 1 to 2 companies a year and make 10 to 12 growth investments a year. That sounds pretty good.
Chaps, I've loved this. Thank you so much for putting up with my very general questions, Jeffrey. Terrible questions. Still, got more weaknesses for you, baby. I so appreciate it.
I'm just happy you didn't tell me my weaknesses.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you in person. I can't wait to see you in person, Harry, and actually
I'm scared shitless.